Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Monday, you know what that means. Let's talk about what's on the hotness, why it's on the hotness, what you need to know about it, and any other news or trinkets that sort of fall out along the way. We'll kind of talk about them too. Got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of videos coming out in this stretch. So over the weekend, the upcoming Kickstarters, Monster Hunter World, should you back it? This week we're gonna have some Marvel United stuff. It's gonna be a lot going on. So if you're interested, throw me a sub. Trying to get to 10,000 in 2021. I mean, gotta dream big, right? Okay, that's all. That's all I got for you. Let's just talk games. That's why you're here. Let's do this. First up, out of nowhere, right? Galaxy Trucker. Vlada's game from 2007 is getting a 2021 remake, and it looks like this is the direction of the art that they're going. Do you like building space galaxy faring ships and watching them explode along the way along with other people's? There you go. Galaxy Trucker, right? If you're not familiar with Galaxy Trucker, basically you're just simultaneously grabbing pieces of the truck, trying to build it, grab some cargo, make a trek, and survive to the end of the trek to deliver your goods. Now they say on the new page that there is going to be a 3-trek campaign-ish mode if you want a little longer game. But they've streamlined it as well, so if you only want to do a single trek, you can do that in this game as well instead. This is a tile-laying game in the fact that you are putting down these pieces and then trying to decide if, when you are hitting those setbacks, whether or not it's worth trying to repair or just trying to keep on moving to the end destination in order to get there and deliver your goods. This game is relatively well thought of. It's in the top 200 on Board Game Geek, and I think thematically it's ranked like 53. So this is a solid classic game. Does it appeal to you though? Is the new art going to appeal more or less? I think they're going for the more family-friendly version here, obviously, but is that going to be a turn on or a turn off? Is this going to be a game if they're offering more ship tiles, different art, a few more tweaks in terms of streamlined play? Does that make you want it more? Does that make you want it less? It's an interesting concept. But again, it's another remake of a game that, did it need a remake? I don't know. I haven't played it. I'm not as familiar with it as probably some of you are. But that's always the first thought that goes into my head lately. We're remaking these games that are like a decade old. It's like Hollywood, right? Don't have to come up with a new idea. We'll just slightly remake an old one. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes you go, did we really need this? I don't know what side of that line that this is going to fall on, but it'll be interesting to see how it's received. So, there you go. Galaxy Trucker, right? Next up is one of the latest releases from Pandasaurus called Brew by Steven Torres, a 2 to 4 player worker placement, area majority, card drafting, dice rolling game. In this game, the enchanted forest is broken. Time is all a blur. Seasons are all happening at the same time. So you are trying to get them back in order and control them. You're going to be using your elemental dice in order to do so. Or you're going to be going to the village using it as a worker placement, trying to procure the resources that are going to allow you to do that in the first place. This game is currently on pre-order, and it is slowly trickling out to reviewers and then to the general retail. Pre-orders on Pandasaurus, and I'm not sure if this is true at other retailers as well, will include a free mini expansion. Retail release will actually be almost 2 months away in June on the 16th. The art is definitely eye-popping. Is the combination of the area control and the worker placement in this mixed seasons using animals and elemental dice as well, dice and worker placement and area control, you don't always see that combination. Is it going to work? I see people playing it online. I think they were doing demos this week at Aw Shucks, the online convention. So if you want to check it out, I know that you can probably be able to do that. And I know that copies are being sent in to reviewers in the next month or so. So there will definitely be more information out there before the retail release. And if you're like me, most of the time, I say this as a general rule, not just Pandasaurus, but retail pre-orders are relatively rare. And I think they should be. Because as I see plenty of times on Board Game Geek, all these new releases 2-3 weeks after they're released being turned around and sold on the marketplace or in auctions. So you just got to be really aware what you're getting into. I've had this happen with a few of my games that I picked up at retail. So I'm a little gun shy when it comes to that, but this has got some hype behind it. So at least check it out if that combination of things plus the artwork is appealing to you. That's Brew. Look, Monster Hunter World, the board game, is on the hotness. Over the weekend, released my Should You Back. It's got a couple days left at this point, like 3 days left. It's going to be in the millions. It's already well over 3. It's probably going to be close to 5 by the time it ends. Steamforged's latest game looks good on the surface, looks better than all of their other games. I'll say that flat out. But the question still is whether or not it's going to be excellent. Because I think it has the makings, without giving you, too much of a long synopsis that I did in the other video, of a very solid game. But the more I get into this hobby, I'm not looking for solid games, right? I'm looking for games that I want to play over and over that are excellent for me. The tricky point with this one is to tell whether or not this is going to be good for me versus just good in general. Like I said, I think unlike some of the other games, the basement is relatively higher. But I'm not sure the ceiling is as high as Primal, to do a direct comparison there, because that's where all the comparisons will be. There also are exclusives. And the price point is almost equivalent to Primal, which I have to think is somewhat intentional. But for some of the uniqueness, there are also some of the lessers in terms of the gameplay mechanics, the difference between the monsters. They've definitely done some very good things. There are definitely some things that I go, well, I wish this was slightly different. And so that's the question you have to ask yourself right now. But it is what it is. You're taking a risk either way, and that's the nature of crowdfunding. Are you going to be more upset, as I said in the video, with buyer's remorse or misser's regret? That's what you ultimately have to ask yourself. But that is why, obviously, Monster Hunter World, the board game, is on the hotness. It's a Wonderful Kingdom. I mean, let's be honest. When these big campaigns hit crowdfunding, they end up on the hotness. This one is no exception. This is the latest game in the It's a Wonderful series. And it is a 2-player dueling game. A little bit of I cut, you choose when you're splitting the cards at the beginning of the first phase, and then going into your engine building and resource gathering. And it's just a different take on it. And as I said in the roundup last week, if you liked the base game and wanted it more just for a 2-player version, but with something different, more streamlined, but very tactical, this is your game. However, if you did not like It's a Wonderful World in the first place, I also don't think this game, because it's staying with a very similar engine, is going to change your opinion of it. Because it is an engine builder, resource collection, card playing driven game. And you either like that at this point, or you probably don't. The price point is relatively good. There are 2 pledge levels that you have to be aware of. There is a little bit of content, gameplay locked at one of the higher pledge levels, which I was not very pleased with on the Kickstarter page of the legendary Deluxe pledge. But I'm not sure if it's worth that, because it reminds me a little bit of my copy of Crimson Company, where I've got this big box with a tiny amount of cards and this big board that's, otherwise the box is 80% air. And I just don't know from that standpoint. I think it's going to be another one that goes right down to the wire, because I think this would be a great 2-player dueling, tactical, sort of akin to Res Arcana for my wife and I to play. The same level of tactical thinkiness, but not long-term strategy necessary, long game session required. And I think it fits that niche. And again, I don't think the basement is very low. I think the basement for this game is very high from a two-player tactical game standpoint. And there aren't a ton of those. At least in this ilk. There's plenty of other two-player dueling, wizards, magic, that sort of thing. This is slightly different. So, but that is why, again, it's on the hotness. Next up is Oath. Oath is still there. Oath is still in the process of being delivered. US backers are supposed to be getting it sometime in the month of May. The rest of the world is getting it as it's trickling out. Reviews are slowly coming out. I imagine that a bunch of big channels will have more of it. I think there's a few out there already. I don't really know what else needs to be said. It is not a legacy game, but a campaign-ish game where previous games' results have ripple effect over time in the upcoming games, but you can also jump in, jump out without any problem or ramification. Cole Wehrle, The Art of Kyle Farron, in case you somehow can't recognize it at this point. I think it's going to be a great game. But again, just like Monster Hunter, this is not going to be a great game for everybody. It's not. And so I wonder, and I speculate, how many copies are going to end up in the secondary market because of that. Now, the counter argument being, well, there was a ton of information out there, whole tons of beta testing and Still, there are still plenty of people that do not look at any of that. I know because I used to be one of them. And there are just a lot of people that like the idea, like the concept, do not want to miss out on the hype train of whatever it may be, and do not fully look at it and then end up selling it. And so I just wonder what the percentage of that is going to be with this game compared to the typical. Like Root. Root is another classic example of, I saw a lot in the secondary market because people didn't realize what it was comparatively to what they thought it was. And that's okay, but, you learn, hopefully. I have, at least. Anyway, speaking from personal experience. But that is why, again, Oath is still going to be up there for quite some time on the hotness. Next up is After the Empire. In case you missed my roundup this past week, After the Empire relaunched a deluxe version with a solo expansion, I think. Expansion, just tied in, whatever. On Gamefound this past week, and after having somewhat relatively good reception and critical acclaim from several review channels, it's doing, relatively well. It's 6 digits right now, which is great for a game that really flew under the radar the first time around. It was on crowdfunding. And I mean, that's, depending on how much you like that or don't like that, 1 or 2 of these very good reviews from one of these big channels can really do that for a game or a company. And that's slightly terrifying, slightly exciting at the same time, right? And Tom Vassel's review of this was very positive as a tower defense worker placement style game, which is a very odd combination of things, but they have some 3D buildings and they're deluxifying it, so you get plastic. And that was my biggest question. That was my biggest concern, even on the roundup, was, one, there was a little bit of gated content with the deluxe version as opposed to the non-deluxe version. Not a huge amount, but then also I like the wood better, especially on the board and the aesthetic in general of this game. And it's interesting, I see that complaint when it's leveled at the Ameritrash games. It's just a bunch of plastic. But when you tie it in with the worker placement, suddenly I don't hear all those same people shouting that it's just a bunch of plastic. And that's not anything against these guys. I mean, these guys are doing their thing. But it's just the community in and of itself that sort of somehow splits that sometimes, It's weird. It's weird. Anyway, it's okay to like plastic. It's okay not to like plastic. It's okay to like all the deluxifications. It's okay not to like the deluxifications. It's okay to like and not like whatever you like. Just have fun with it. And don't bring down other people's fun. But, it's doing well. And congratulations for these guys, but it's a completely different combination of things than we've really kind of seen out there, especially with a little bit of the 3D element of the building of the castles. So if tower defense and worker placement sounds like a hit for you, go check this out on Gamefound, because it's definitely something unique. But that's why it's on the hotness. Next up on the hotness is The Initiative by Corey. I can't pronounce his last name. I'll show you right here. Konechka. I'm going to screw that up. From Unexpected Games and ADC Blackfire Entertainment. So what do you need to know about the initiative? Why is it on the Hotness? Well, it's a recent retail release that's going on currently. It is a spycraft type game where you are trying to decode what is going on. In about 25 years ago, you're playing as teenagers who found a code called the key. And it's in the form of a board game, coincidentally, right? You are going to be going through this comic book series of chapters as a campaign that they call a pivotal point in those teenagers' lives. Multiple chapters with segments ranging from 30 to 60 minutes per chapter, with a little bit of reward if you win, but also a failing forward mechanic in case you don't. Variable powers, area movement, as well as a large component of deduction, as you would sort of expect given the presentation. The chapters build upon each other, weaving narrative, using the information that you've obtained from previous chapters in order to complete future ones. It's a cooperative puzzler. Now, the release overseas was on April 9. The release in Canada that they mentioned on the Board Game Geek forums is on April 30. So you're seeing a splattering of who has it and what is going on. There are a couple reviews. There are some, comments already on pros and cons. So if this sounds like something of your ilk, a smaller campaign legacy deduction as opposed to something else in that cooperative genre, this is probably worth a look. The few comments that I've seen have been very positive in terms of how this has been received. But this is one of the big retail releases this month, so that's why, again, it's on the Hotness. Also on the Hotness, I've talked about this several times, Hidden Leaders from Board Game Goblins, running on Kickstarter right now. It's approaching almost $100,000 as a 2 to 6 player, again, sort of bluffing deduction, semi-cooperative, but not really, game where you are manipulating one of two factions as one of these 6 leaders, trying to get a certain faction the victory. And depending on where these two pieces fall along the track, determines which of the 4 factions that are possible wins. It is a card-driven game. I have a copy of it that was just sent to me by Board Game Goblins, and so I'm hoping that I will have a little bit more information and my thoughts personally on how it plays in the next week or so. But I really like the aesthetic. It is one of those hidden gems so far on Kickstarter that all of a sudden kind of comes out of nowhere and is raising 6 digits. They are hitting some stretch goals, small ones, albeit individual cards, a little bit of deluxe upgrades. But again, as a smaller company, a smaller project, this is probably closer to true stretch goals because, they probably weren't expecting to raise this much in the first place. As they said on Twitter, that they had to get the graphics guy doing his thing because they weren't even expecting to fund in the first 24 hours. So all in all, hopefully I'll have some more thoughts in the next week, but looks to be solid so far. If it interests you, check it out on Kickstarter right now. Now we have Hadrian's Wall. Now, if you're trying to guess what type of game this is and you don't know, you're probably going to be wrong because I would not have thought of this. At least I personally would have gotten it wrong. Hadrian's Wall is a competitive roll and write where you are one of these 6 Roman generals in charge of building this wall around the Roman Empire, trying to hold the Picts off by constructing it, defending it, and upgrading it through the 6 rounds that you do. It's a Kickstarter that is, again, being in the process of delivered to backers right now. And it has been really relatively well received as a little bit of a heavier roll and write, like I mentioned. You can see already it's got an 8.4 rating, which, again, even with only 142 ratings, is nothing to sneeze at. Now, while Kickstarter backers are getting this 1 to 6 player game right now, it looks like the general retail may not be until the end of June, so if you're looking to pick it up, you may have to go on the secondary market to see what it's going to look like from that standpoint if you can't wait. If you are a fan of the roll and writes, though, this looks like, again, something unique, something that we're not seeing a ton of, especially with the theme. So, that's why it's on the Hotness, and that's what you need to know about it in the first place. The only other thing of note, and this is probably more for maybe next time's Monday morning hotness quarterback more than anything else, Kemet, Blood and Sand, the next version of Kemet that funded on Kickstarter, is in the process of being delivered to people. Most of the pledge levels around the world are in the process of delivering right now, or will be a significant portion delivering this coming week. So you're going to see it pop up everywhere. I'm sure you'll see people selling it, people talking about it. That's why. That's what you need to know. All in all, though, there you go. Relatively quiet week, apart from, like I said, what was on the hotness. Not a whole lot of other games or board game adjacent news that I really sort of grasped onto and found that I wanted to put in here. So, hey, if you've got something in the comment section, let me know. You can always submit something to me as well. Hey, you know me. I'm open to stuff. I'm open to hearing from you guys and what you think and what's going on. So, hey, let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. Last part of April, almost May. It's going to be videos based off that coming up soon too. That time of the month. Okay. See you around. Stay classy. Thanks for watching.